Hi, this is Rosenberg. Welcome to my latest YouTube video and podcast. Today I'm going to go over some information that is an update on concepts I created years ago, namely my observe, don't absorb technique. This will not be a review of exactly what observe, don't absorb is, although I'm going to start it with a brief introduction. The purpose of today's presentation is to guide a person who is ready to set boundaries with an individual with whom they determined is a pathological narcissist who is incapable of fostering mutuality, reciprocity of love, respect, caring, protection, and trust. To remind people, the definition of codependency is very simple. It's a person who in a relationship gives all, or if not most, of the love, respect, caring, trust, and protection to an individual, wants it to be mutual. It is not. Nothing that they can do can make it so, and they stay in a relationship. It's that simple. It's not complicated. My new book, The Codependency Revolution, not only talks about and expands upon codependency and its exact nature, but it's absolutely crucial for us to understand the simplicity of the definition, because the difficult part is the personality types. And I even wrote a whole chapter about that in my latest book. So if you are an SLD, a codependent, someone who has self-love deficit disorder, and you are in some form of recovery healing program or my self-love recovery treatment program, you are eventually going to get to the stage where you're ready to set boundaries with the pathological narcissist, which almost always results in the end of the relationship. To remind you that pathological narcissists all have a personality disorder. They either have borderline, narcissistic, or antisocial personality disorder. And with that personality disorder, they do not have the ability for empathy, remorse. They tend not to take responsibility for their problems. They blame others for their problems, and therefore don't go to therapy, are not open to some mutual and satisfying compromise in resolving a problem. It's all about them. Or as one person once told me, it's their way or the highway. So let's jump back a little bit. You're an SLD or a codependent, someone who's self-love deficient. You have been in this recovery program of mine or something similar, and you have done all of the preparatory work to get to the point of setting boundaries. Now, in my self-love recovery treatment program, I have 11 stages, which is setting boundaries in a hostile environment. All of the other stages prepare the SLD for the most difficult, challenging, and daunting tasks that they've ever done in their life. And that is to declare the termination of the relationship, set the boundaries, and not get sucked back in. Not get sucked back in because of their weakness, their ambivalence. No, because by that time in the program, they have developed self-love abundance. They have done really good work in neutralizing the core elements of SLDD, which is attachment trauma, core shame, pathological loneliness, relationship addiction, and on top of it, and I'm thinking of my pyramid, all the symptoms and problems that we know and misidentify as codependency or SLDD or self-love deficit disorder. But before getting to the stage where you set boundaries in a hostile environment, which I'll be talking about shortly, you have done the important work in the stage that preceded it, and that is preparing for the narcissistic storm. That could be the very most important stage of all of the bunch, because in that stage, you study everything possible about the pathological narcissist, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, the spouse, the lover, the brother, the sister, the mother, the father, whomever is the pathological narcissist with whom you have to create healthy boundaries that, because of their personality disorder, will necessitate the end of the relationship. You learn the ins and outs, the way that they manipulate you, the way that you fall prey to manipulation. You have learned about gaslighting. You will have been disconnected from the gaslit, sleepwalking, the zombification. These are words I'm making up, of course. But when the gaslighter, the pathological narcissist, takes control of your mind and you become the broken person, that they need you to be in order for them to isolate you and for you to need them and be afraid to leave the relationship. You've learned about the different types of personality disorders and how they, in their unique sense of denial and entitlement and grandiose thinking, justify all of the reasons they want to hurt you or take everything from you and give very little in turn. That stage prepares you for that pertinent information, but it also prepares you for understanding everything about you as this SLD, as this codependent, who has been forever susceptible to what these people do, why you do that, what happened to you in your childhood, your family, your previous relationships, historically in the relationship that you're in, what happened, how did you get to this point? And through this stage, and it could be a lengthy stage, the client, the recovering SLD, learns proactively everything they need to know about the narcissist, everything they need to know about their SLD selves, and what kept them entrapped, what kept them in chains, both through the narcissist's proactive strategies to weaken and isolate them, and what about them kept them isolated, trapped, and hopeless. And by the time you finish preparing for the narcissistic storm stage, you are ready for the stage where you're going to set the boundaries. It's not going to be easy, and you know that, but it's going to be possible because you have studied every part of the problem, inside and out, and you have prepared. You have been taught and you have partially mastered the observe, don't absorb technique. Basically, ODA is being able to temporarily disassociate from your emotions, which is not natural, by the way. And I would not recommend it as a regular practice, but this is about survival. When you temporarily disassociate from your emotions so that you can escape. After they escape, you reconnect. So with this temporary disassociation and this temporary numbness, because disassociation is not a good thing and it's extreme. It's a mental health disorder. It's very serious, but you're in control of it. It's observe and absorb. You're observing, disassociating from your emotions, and knowing that if you let your emotions come online, you will be susceptible to having an emotional reaction or absorbing. So if someone, namely a pathological narcissist, instigates you in order to get you mad, and when you getting mad, you want to fight back and stand up for yourself, and by you standing up and fighting for yourself, then they have the reason, so at least they think in their mind, to punish you or to hurt you, and they feel justified, then you basically have engaged in a fight that you lost from the very beginning, and that the problem is you get engaged in a fight that's impossible to win. So George Bernard Shaw, his famous saying, and everyone has heard me say that, don't wrestle with pigs, you'll get dirty, and besides, the pig likes it. You know the narcissist wins or will win if they get you in the wrestling ring. They get an emotional reaction. Going back to observe and absorb. They can take you away from your disassociated, your disconnected, your observing self. Everything relies on your ability to observe, watch them, try to instigate you. Predict how they will do it, because you've already studied it. And I have more information on how to do this and even other guides and sub-techniques to use within this very important strategy. But again, this video is not on observe, don't absorb. I have a 90-minute, very detailed audio and video presentation on observe and don't absorb. That you can get on my selfloverecovery.com website. Or there are bits and pieces of it on YouTube. Just Google it. So observe, to temporarily disassociate, to predict that you lose power if you get angry, which means you've absorbed the toxins. You've been lured into the wrestling ring, because the wrestling ring is the reaction. The wrestling ring is the argument. The wrestling ring is the conversation. I have several videos on the concept of induced conversation. So go check those out. They're on YouTube. And I have a 6-hour everything you need to know about pathological narcissism. Again, that's on selfloverecovery.com. Observing, not absorbing. Not getting into the pig's wrestling ring. Knowing that if you have a reaction, they got you. Knowing that once you get angry, you lose composure. I call this false power syndrome. Of course, a lot of information that you can get in other sources, but for now, I want to move this forward. The goal for you is to not react, to watch, to predict what they're going to do, and understand that you are safe and that you have to stay out of the wrestling ring, which means terminate whatever is going on, the conversation, the event, the phone call, the text messaging. You have to end it. Here is some information that is very important in this process, and this is primarily what I wanted this video to be about, and that is how to make the conversation your last, how to begin the execution of observe, don't absorb, and to set the primary boundary and not fall prey to being pulled back into it. I have a YouTube video, and it's in the other resources I told you on my selfloverecovery.com website, but talks specifically about the 3-strike boundary rule. It talks specifically, and I'm looking at my notes here, about the worst case scenario exercise, the of course rule, induced conversation, observe, don't absorb fantasy defense strategies, and of course, observe, don't absorb, and others. So you're going to have had practice and experience with all of these ideas, concepts, so that when you set that boundary, and this is specified in the 3-strike boundary rule video, by the time you set that last boundary, which is the 3rd strike, it will be the last time you respond. And basically it goes like this. Strike 1, you set the boundary and explain why. I do not want to be in a relationship with you anymore. In fact, I want to terminate it permanently because I've never felt safe with you and you have not been open in any way to making me feel safe. Therefore, I've decided I want to give you no more chances, and I have unequivocally and completely and forever decided that I am done with this relationship, and I will not explain it to you, and I will not answer your questions. I will not respond to your provocations. It will be silence. And when I'm done talking, this is when it starts. And of course, in the 3-strike boundary rule, you assume that they won't understand or agree with the boundary, so you go through that 3 times. And I'll let you watch that video. The 2nd time is a summary, and the 3rd time is a very short, brief presentation of it. And then you go offline. And that is when you prepare for the storm. And you've been preparing for it. You've proactively worked through it. And there are so many things, so much you have had to prepare for that you're going to watch it unfold, often using observe, don't absorb, and know it's going to be tough, but you'll survive because you worked it out. And then you have to prepare for the storm and gut it out. While you do this, you have to keep reminding yourself that you're safe because you have already proactively shored up any potential area that they can hurt, exploit, or turn people against you or try to disrupt your life. You have to watch it, keep yourself from engaging, and that is the repeated use of observe, don't absorb, and not letting yourself to be induced into a conversation. Now that's hard. What will happen, as I talked about in the last video I did, or maybe the video before the last I did, that narcissists are bloodsuckers, they're emotional vampires, but more specifically, they're parasites. Narcissists need the SLD to survive emotionally. They need to exploit, extract, take as much as they can emotionally from the one person, the only person that will give it up with only a minimal fight. And that symbiotic, blood-sucking, that exploitative relationship, and when that exploitative relationship ends, and you execute the boundaries and you don't get sucked into the wrestling ring and you observe, don't absorb, they're going to cycle through a number of strategies, techniques, and tricks that are specifically geared to pull you in. I have an article on this, and it's the 17 tricks that narcissists do to keep you from breaking up or keeping you from terminating a relationship. A link to that article will be below. And they will be very effective if you're not ready. But you will be ready. You will know what to do and what not to do. And the hardest thing that you will ever do in your life is to not get into the wrestling ring, is to watch the person try to trigger you, to lure you into a conversation, into an argument, into defending yourself. Or they might try to hurt you and do something bad, say call your employer and do some really terrible, manipulative and harmful actions, which will get you mad. You're allowed to get mad, of course. But calling them, yelling at them, and screaming at them is part of getting into the wrestling ring. You can execute consequences, and that is a whole other discussion that takes very specific type of thinking, strategic thinking and planning in order to not only prepare yourself, but in order to be able to respond quickly and as effectively as you can. It's hard. It'll be the hardest thing that you've ever done. But the reason it works is you have already done a lot of the necessary mental health psychological work that is in the other preceding stages. And if you have not done that, you're going to probably fail. Which is why, if you're not familiar with my 11-stage self-love recovery treatment program or my codependency cure video, which is basically the same, one's more in more detail, all available at selfloverecovery.com, and you haven't worked through those stages, hopefully you have a therapist that understands them, it could help you, or you can give me a call and get involved in my self-love recovery treatment program. You will not be pulled back into the wrestling ring. You will go through the necessary stages to watch the narcissist do everything and anything to pull you back. It will be as if you are taking away their oxygen. It will be as if that you are murdering them. When you are successful and you are at the last stage right before they give up and leave you alone, they will do anything they can because to them, it's an existential crisis. They can't live without exploiting and living off of and taking advantage of another person, namely their SLD or codependent partner. And if you understand how desperate they will get, and I want you to consider that their desperation, their fear, their anxiety that is related to leaving them is connected to the horrible trauma that happened to them as children that is responsible for their personality disorder, which has been disassociated from their memory and not available to them. People with a personality disorder rarely remember the trauma of their childhood. SLDs can remember. It might take a little coaxing, a little bit of help, But the narcissists, they can't, because it was so bad, so horrendous. The human brain naturally has its own defense mechanisms, and it cordoned in all of those traumatic memories. It sequestered them, took them offline, a lot like PTSD, but much more permanently. But in the throes of accepting complete abandonment, they will be triggered back to the elemental childhood memories of abandonment. And you'll see them fall apart. You'll see them beg and cry. You will want to rescue them if you have not prepared for it. It might be the hardest thing that you've ever seen, but you will know that what you see, which I call the humanization trick, which I have YouTube videos on, you'll know it's only a temporary condition. It's only a window that opens up, that once they get what they intend, or exact revenge or exact a consequence, that window closes and it doesn't open up. So in conclusion, if you're an SLD, you must read, if you haven't read, my Human Magnet Syndrome book. But if you haven't read the Human Magnet Syndrome book, I actually recommend my latest book. See, the Human Magnet Syndrome book was written in 2017. My latest book, which was written in 2024, The Codependency Revolution, it has all the Human Magnet Syndrome information in it, but I updated it, and it expands on the subject. That's why I called it Codependency Revolution, Fixing What Has Always Been Broken. I'm not trying to sell you a book. I am trying to give you the basic information that will help you navigate the crazy pathways that your psyche will want to take you, or the narcissist will want to put you on. Get the book, learn about everything you can about yourself, the narcissist. If you are not in psychotherapy, get into psychotherapy and attempt to find a therapist that understands or follows my work. I've been doing this for quite a long time, and I used to travel the United States giving professional trainings to therapists. So my work is well known. And if they don't know it, and a therapist should check it out online, it usually resonates to most psychotherapists, mental health clinicians, because it's all based upon psychology. It's all based upon theories and techniques that I learned, and then I created another way to say the same thing and expand it. And try to get them to look at that material and ask them to consider it, so that you can move through these progressive stages to prepare you for the biggest fight of your lifetime. That you, because you love yourself, or will love yourself by this point, which is the opposite of self-love deficit disorder and the goal of my program, you're going to get through. You can do this. You got it. You can figure this out no matter how hard this is. I believe in you. Believe in yourself. Okay. I hope this video helps. It's a lot of information. It's a summary of a lot of concepts and techniques that I created that are available in one 6-hour seminar, which is everything you need to know about narcissistic abuse, or something like that. I should know all the titles, but it's something like that. But at selfloverecovery.com. Get into treatment, get into therapy, contact me, watch these videos, watch them over and over again. You can do this. Survive. And it's your birthright to love yourself. So believe in it. Okay. Bye-bye.